So, my name is Joroga Wahome, as I've said before. I am the astrologer, both with the Kingdom Touch Ministries. Also, I run what called Neoteran Astrology is part of Kingdom Touch Ministries, Holy Ghost Ambassadors. So, there should be no contradiction about that. So, today we are going into what we call the weekly astrological insights. And what I've been hoping to do, every time we come here, we try to improve the views that we have, or rather the information that we are giving out, so that it is of greater import and it helps us to improve and move forward, able to attain to what has been promised us. I see my slide is saying that we are on the 21st, and actually today is the 26th day of the first month of our third year. That is correct. We are in the fourth week of this year. This year is going to be a long year. I think we're going to have almost about 56, 55 weeks. I think the previous months we've been going for about 49 or 50 weeks. But today we're going to, this year we're going to have about 55 weeks counting from the time we began the new year. And we began the new year on this first day of the week. Um, Today, what I look at is really actually something that we've not been doing for a while. We've not been looking at the entirety of the celestial heavens as they are, and we know there is much information that is to be garnered not just from the main major planets but also from the minor planets. And this is the only thing we're going to do tonight. Tonight we don't have too much time. There is some of us will be leaving later in this day or this night, and therefore that will mean getting off from this place quite late. So I'll try to take as little time as possible in demonstrating this. Now, this is basically what we've been seeing all across the other times that we've been sharing. We have been looking at the seven major planets, and of course, as they are major, they are essential for our understanding of the times and places we are. They are the ones that guide us. I don't know why I have two pointers on the screen. I can't understand properly. Why are there two? If I pick a pen, but I'd rather have a laser pointer instead of a. Okay, well, I can't understand why is the case. So then I'll have to use a highlighter. Highlighter is not as good as a pen. I would have rather had a laser pen. So these are the seven major planets that we deal with. None of this is going to suit my purposes as good as a laser pointer. So you'll have to use the left, the one that is the one to the right, the one that is expressing to the right of your screen. And again, these views are best viewed if you have a much bigger screen than your phone. And if you're going to view, you can see view on your smartphone, but if you do that, just ensure you have full screen, because if you are seeing this view as a small fraction of your screen, definitely you'll not be able to get to the details about what we are trying to share. Now, this is like the very foundational graphics that represent our astrology. If you are among the people that were for whom we've done an astrological profile, you'll find that this is the one of the major guides that tell us the transits and the alignments that were there at the time of your birth. We use the very same graphics. It's very, very important that we remain consistent. And since we've arrived at this kind of representing the celestial heavens this way, we are able to give much more information, because you can see clearly when I say like maybe this planet is ascending, you can be able to see clearly it's ascending. Like you can see now it's actually descending. The very same thing. In actual fact, they are not really descending up until they cross the equinox point, because that's the point that marks the central point in the celestial alignments. And therefore, when a planet crosses that point, that is when we go into its descent. Very good example is the sun. The sun is the one that we use the dark representation, because the embodiment of a sun is darkness, its structure is light. So the embodiment of a sun, that is why we see it in darkness, and this is a very crucial point. Today, when or not today, actually, to be the previous day, that is Wednesday, because this we take them at the exact midpoint of a week when the sun is rising to welcome the morning of Wednesday, halfway point through the week. That is when we take this sort of, it's not really a forecast, it's really just like a screen grab. It's like we take a screenshot of the skies and we use that to be a representation of mainly the alignments that will be there of the planets through that week. Now, this is a general description, but every one of us is, I know there's many people, there are several people now whom we have done a respectable profile and able to get this information, because when you can compare this graphic together with what is in your profile, you'll be able to tell, oh, this planet, like let's say Jupiter, like is it here, maybe it's the very same it was in my profile. That means we have a conjunction that is that expresses the very same thing that was happening at the time you were born. I'm not liking this. So I'll just take a laser point. I'll take a pen, but I'll not draw. I don't know whether I can increase that size, or rather if I use a highlighter. The highlighter is too unuseful for me. Let me use a pen, because this is the Jupiter. If Jupiter was in House Abizelda, then you'll know that at this time you have a lot of influence on Jupiter, or rather the gateway that Jupiter opens, because Jupiter itself is not something that reasons to you creatively. What reasons to you creatively is the water above. It's the creative environment that is in the spiritual immaterial world, and also the one that is in the material world. The interface between the two is the celestial heavens, and the planets are not only recording mechanisms, but they are the ones that open certain gateways. So I'm just giving that as an example. So this week, what we have is we are seeing the sun very much at the verge of crossing through the equinox point. The equinox point is a neat point in the sense that it doesn't change across ages, across years or days. That point is always there. It is at the end of house 12 and the beginning of house 1. But we see something very crucial happening is that now we have this planet called Mercury. Mercury is just crossing it to that point, the equinox point, but it's crossing it the other way because it's coming from house number 1, where it has spent the last 1 month in. And then halfway through the month, it began its, or rather, really actually at the very beginning of the month, it began its retrograde motion in its cycle, in its synodic cycle around the sun. And we are at a point where the conjunction is about to happen. Something very amazing is going to happen, that because on Friday, 2 days from now, or a day actually, just over a day from now, is when we are going to experience the equinox point. Rather, we are not going to experience that, but the sun is going to cross the equinox point. For us, it will be the definitive marker that indeed we are right in calling this the first month of our year. Because again, the sun is just beginning its cycle. The moon, well, it is just about to come to complete the cycle, but we know where we are going to correct that. But this is the signal that we wait for the sun really to go into the descent, or rather the part that represents its darkness, the darkness half of its cycle. In a yearly cycle, this is the entirety of that point where it will traverse over the next 6 months. This is where the sun is going to be in, and that is why it's going into that dark phase. And therefore, this is a very important date. If you see, look at our calendar, it was indicated as one of the major junctions we'll be celebrating. And therefore, that very day, this will happen at the dawn. You want the exact points when this will happen, and if you wanted to participate in the collective consciousness that we need to inscribe in the gateway of time, in the timeline of time, when the sun crosses that equinox point. Because again, that one is just another gateway, giving us another gateway to speak into the waters. There are some words that we can speak at that point, and we will have the exact timings, but only for people who are consciously willing to participate in such kind of creative enterprise. So contact me and we'll be able to give you. So this is what we are waiting. It's a very major transition and alignment that is happening. So the transition will happen at around dawn, and then about an hour to noon, uh, Mercury will come into exact conjunction with the Sun. If the two were in conjunction, I would have shown them graphically as one on top of the other. But actually, by the time I was checking in the morning, I think it was about Mercury was about 4 degrees away. At this point in time, Mercury is moving very, very quickly. At a time of the conjunctions are very much like what happens also at the point where either it's rising or setting across the horizon. They're instantaneous sort of gateway openings. They happen at the spur of the moment, and then it ends. It's not like the same as when they are reaching the apex. Because when a planet reaches an apex like here of its cycle, this remember is just the most, it's really the cycle of a sun, then that is a standstill and it takes several days for the sun to do that. So, but this is a moment in time. So it's very, very important to ensure that you catch it. Speaking, because actually starting too early can just be you are expending your creative energy. And going on too late, you're still expending your energy. Just ensure that you catch it at that moment. And therefore, it's very, very, we are very, very careful with our timings as we mark that. Then we have Venus. Venus is about to catch the sun, but it's going to take almost a month to catch the sun to get into conjunction because remember, the sun is not stationary at this point, it's also moving. And it will be some time when the sun is in house one when you have the conjunction of Venus. Remember, for the conjunction of Venus, that will be when it will be transitioning from being a morning planet to being, rather being a morning star to an evening star. So it's halfway point. But for Mercury, it's actually the completion of a cycle. It will be cycle right before. We only have one more transit of Mercury that is in accordance to this time because this phase of Mercury is one of birthing. But by midday Friday, Mercury will have entered the phase that we call seeding. So we only have one day. But this one actually, of course, is for those people who have made inquiries and we have a good understanding of their profiles. The moon is here, right entering into house 11 in the morning, but it's traversed now, of course, partly through this house. And on Friday, or rather, no, about sometime on Saturday, um, we are going to have I think it's actually going to be on Monday, on Sunday or Monday when the Sun will meet, will be another conjunction. So we have these two conjunctions coming. The conjunction of Mercury happening on Friday, and the one of it depends on where we are on our calendar. You know, I have lost track of that. Let me just check very quickly on our calendar. Oh, this will be happening on Monday, sometime early on Monday. That is when the that conjunction is going to happen to mark the end of the year. So we have the conjunction that is happening now on 27. We have the conjunction with Mercury and the Sun, and then we have another conjunction happening on Monday. This one happens every month. It is one of the Moon and the Sun. Now let's go to this other view. This view is what we are starting to look at. And while we observe 7 major planets, we also have a total of 9 minor planets. Not really 9, actually there are 7. There are 6 minor planets, and then we have 3 points that are what we call transitory points. Transitory celestial points. Transitory in the sense that they are not fixed on the celestial grid like these others. Like the Virgoan equinox is a point, but that one does not move. It is not planetary. It doesn't show any planetary motion. Sagittarian solstice as well, or rather what we call the southern solstice. And then we have the equinox point. Of course, there are two of them. The one we are talking about is what we labeled here, the Virgoan equinox, but I've said it's much more accurate to talk about it as the descendant equinox. And then we have the Piscean equinox that gives us a sign for the holy 7th month on which we celebrate our Passover time. And well, that's going to come in the 7th month after the sun, when the sun is ascending. And these major points, as you can see, we have two, the 2 points that are associated with the moon. This is the one that is descendant. And actually, from this view, you can see exactly why we call it the descendant, because it's always in the descendant half of the celestial heaven. It is in the night part of the celestial heaven, so to speak, or rather the southern half, the one that represents descent, the one that represents for our seeding and brooding. And then we have this other one that is the ascendant one, and we currently at this point it's in conjunction with the planet Uranus. Uranus is a very small, it's quite a slow planet. We know it's much slower than Saturn, the one of the major, the slowest major planets. But it's naturally not even the slowest amongst the minor planets because you also have Neptune. Neptune is here in house number 6, and it's also about, it seems like it's about to go into conjunction with the anti-solar point. The anti-solar point is separated from the sun by 6 houses, but it moves at the same speed as the sun. So actually, it's not that this conjunction is beginning, but actually the conjunction is ending. It just happened maybe within the last few weeks. These were in conjunction, but of course we're not looking at. Then here we have another planet, and actually this planet last week when I was explaining about houses, I mentioned this planet called Eris. Eris is a planet that does not follow the zodiac at all. It does follow the celestial heavens, but it doesn't move into it moves into houses, but it rarely moves into a zodiac house, or rather, yes, the zodiac part of a house, because the house is not really zodiac, it's the hosts that are zodiac. Right now, if you can see where it is, it's actually crossing the celestial equator. The celestial equator is never very far away from the zodiac uh, belt of a sky. It's much more accurate to describe the zodiac as a belt, as a circular belt. At this point, while it's in house Habizelda, house number 7 in our system, it is just about to cross into a celestial host that can be described as a zodiac host, which is Pisces, but in reality, it's actually hosted by a southern host in house number 7. We said a house contains many hosts. If you traverse across a house all the way from the north and go the way to the south, you'll pass through many constellations. Other systems consider those constellations of no consequence at all. We ourselves understand that there is significance, there is something to learn from them, and not just to learn, but to harness and utilize for our influence and our manifestation and our full becoming. And that is why we consider that. So even if Eris, which is actually it's the slowest of these motions of these planets, but it actually moves across in a southward. Uh, like now, it's in its prograde. So in its prograde, it is ascending across the water, and after many millennia, it will arrive as farther north as it goes, and then it will come to a standstill, very much. Remember, I said this celestial map doesn't go all the way. If it went all the way, it would show us declinations of up to 90 degrees, which is a point that we call the North Pole. So it will go very, very close to the North Pole after many, many millennia. It takes thousands of years, or rather, maybe hundreds of years, but well over 1,000 years to complete its cycle. And then after it comes to a standstill, it will start moving down. And by that time, it will have changed houses, because by the time actually it crosses the ecliptic, it will have moved from house number 7, Habizelda, and to be in house number 8. So in a way, it does cross across a little bit along the zodiac, but not very much along the zodiac. And then it completes. We know there is something that is very essential about Eris, and that is why we are studying it. The others are Pluto. As you can see, Pluto is here, about to go into Cabal. This is very, very important because by the time Saturn, which is a major presence, has been here in Cabal for the last about 3 years. By the time it's going out of Cabal, then Pluto will be going to Cabal, and Pluto will take about a decade to spend here in Cabell. Cabell will then become like the only house that has been continually inhabited by one planet without a day that is failing a planetary body there in house Cabell for more than a decade. I'm not certain, I've not calculated these things. They are very fascinating, by the way. And then what else have I not described? This is Ceres. Ceres is it's actually it's a large asteroid together with the I think also Vesta. So these ones are pretty quick. They are not as slow as either Pluto or Neptune or Uranus or Eris for that matter. But they are very, very important. We are going to be marking them. One of the things you can see with these bodies is that they don't always obey the strict laws about the zodiac. They don't always follow. Like you have seen, the Eris does not even follow the zodiac system at all. But it's still very important. Pluto sometimes drifts off and goes way above the equator, even when it's in a part where the ecliptic passes through the equator, passes either to the north or the south of the equator. Those people were born earlier that 2 decades ago, you see that maybe their Pluto was very much close to the equator, but very far away from the ecliptic belt or the zodiac belt. And therefore, those are the major transitory points for this week. And that would mean this would be like the definition of somebody who was born this week. That would be. But if you see your charts, and for those people who have done their charts, you see that these are quite different. If you have any questions, you can ask. We're still recording this, and after a while, we will post this video. So if there is nothing else, we're going to give this over to Pastor Kevin. But remember, you can ask your question at any time. Thank you so much. Pastor Kevin.